We have the semester 1 examination beginning very soon. We begin with English language. So in today's video, I have got for you 35 sentences in which we will try and revise the basic rules of grammar. These will help you when you are doing your examination, whether the question is on combined sentences or do as directed. So let's begin. Okay, so transformation of sentences. If you know how to write the correct answer, if you know the sentence structure, if you know the syntax, if your grammar is correct, it will help you to make the right choice. So the most common question in the board examination is this. As soon as he heard the gunshot, he ran towards the hill. Begin no sooner. Now what would the answer be? The answer will be, no sooner did he hear the gunshot than he ran towards the hill. So there's a particular sentence structure you have to have. So what is the rule? Here, I have explained this in my previous video. Just a quick revision. If your sentence begins with no sooner, follow it up with did. If you're using did, make sure that you use the verb in the present tense. Add a than and then the rest of the sentence. So we can see this applied over here. No sooner did, the subject he, verb in the present tense here, the gunshot, then the rest of the sentence. He ran towards the hill. If the sentence is no sooner had, then you need to remember the verb should be in the third form. So the correct answer will be no sooner had he heard the gunshot than he ran towards the hill. Now the exception is when you have sentences which talk about regular occurrences or habits. This was also explained in a previous video, but let me repeat. For this kind of a sentence, you will write no sooner do or no sooner does. Do or does depends upon the number, whether it's the subject is singular or plural. So no sooner does, the subject, the verb will be in the present tense, then a than and the rest of the sentence. So let's do one sentence now just to revise this concept. Look at the sentence. As soon as the teacher enters the class, she is greeted by her students. Now this is a regular occurrence. This is the habit. As soon as the teacher enters the class. How do you know it's a regular occurrence? How do you know it's a habit? This verb is in the present tense. So if you have to rewrite this sentence with no sooner, what will the answer be? No sooner does the teacher enter the class than she is greeted by her students. Okay, so does is used for regular occurrences, something that happens normally. In that case, use the verb in the present tense. Remember the spelling of than. The distractor may have then. Do not choose that sentence. That would be incorrect. The next set of sentences I have chosen from direct and indirect speech. This is a bit confusing for some. Now look at this one. My teacher will say, honesty is the best policy. Now most of you remember that honesty is the best policy. It's a universal truth. It does not change. So this is will not change. But also remember, if this, what we call as a reporting verb, is in future tense, or here as it is in present tense, the tense of this part will not change. Okay, so let's look at the answer. My teacher will say, it remains will say. Please don't make it my teacher said. My teacher will say remains my teacher will say that honesty is the best policy. The tense does not change. Sometimes that may be given, sometimes that may not be given. It doesn't make any difference. The answer is correct. Again, my mother says that she is sick. Again, am is present tense, is present tense. So remember, if it is future tense and the reporting verb is in present tense, the tense of the statement you are changing will not change. Next one, he promised he would do it the following day. Now we have to write this with indirect speech, or it could be right using quotations. So remember, he said, comma, I will do it tomorrow. He promised that he would do it the following day. There's no need to write promised over here. So he said I would, we have to make it into will, and the following day tomorrow. While making your choice, make sure the punctuation is also in order. The full stop must be first and then will come the close inverted commas. There should be a comma here. The next one, I saw a panther this morning in indirect speech. So the answer will be, he said that he had seen a panther that morning. Now keep in mind, if the verb is in the past tense, it will change into past perfect when we are changing into indirect speech. So this changes into that, saw changes into had seen. Next one, he said to me, let us have some tea. Let us have some tea. And he said, let me have some water. Okay, I missed the quotation over here, the quotation marks, inverted commas. So let's understand how do we do these sentences. First, understand the nature of these sentences. He said to me, let us have some tea. Now this is a suggestion. This is a proposal. Let us have some tea. When you're changing this, he proposed or suggested to me that we should have some tea. Remember this, if the sentence that begins with let is in the form of a suggestion, use a should in your answer. However, look at the next one. He said, let me have some water. There should be inverted commas here. This is not a suggestion. He's not proposing that he should have some water. He's saying, I want water. I need water. In that case, remember, you need to use might in your answer. He wished that he might have some water. So remember, sentence begins with let. It has to be changed into indirect speech. If it is a proposal or a suggestion, use should. If it is not a proposal or a suggestion, use might. The next one is again important. The teacher said, where do you live? Now, this again I have explained in a previous video. Let me have a quick revision. If a question begins with WH word, like where, how, why, when, then in the question, look for, first you see that there should be no negative. There should be no negative. If there is no negative, then look at the verb. Does it have a do form? If it has, you have to drop this do. Then you look at the verb. If it is in present tense, you put it into past tense. So the correct answer will be, the teacher asked where I lived. This do has to go. Okay, so live was in present tense, we put it into past tense. If it was in past tense, we would have put it in past perfect. Next one. The judge said to the prosecutor, do you agree with the arguments presented yesterday? Now, the question says, begin, the judge asked. Again, remember, if you have a question which can be answered with a simple yes or no, do you agree with the arguments? Yes. Do you agree with the arguments? No. Then it's important for you to use the word if or whether in your answer. So the judge asked the prosecutor if he agreed. Agree present tense changes into agreed with the arguments presented. Yesterday changes into the day before. This is the rule for you to remember. If a question can be answered with a yes or no, indirect speech, remember you need to use if or whether. Next, very important question, the use of unless. You can expect this in the examination. Unless is used to replace sentences that begin with if clauses. Okay, let's understand this. So the question was, you must buy a ticket if you want to board the train. Now here the clause if you want to board the train is here. Now, if you remember the rule I have told in my earlier video, the rule is this. Unless means if not. So if is with a negative, if is with a not, then unless will be with a positive. So look at this one. Here there's a little difference. If you want to board the train, there is no negative over here. So we need to introduce the not in the second part of the sentence. And therefore, we are writing, unless you buy a ticket, you cannot board the train. Okay, take a little time to understand this. Unless is used to replace sentences that begin with if not. Okay, or if it's a if clause and has a not in it. If not is equal to unless with the sentence in the affirmative. So here, if he does not hurry. Now over here there's an if not. We can replace it with unless, but this part of the sentence will not change. Okay, so see the answer, unless he hurries. If he does not hurry, he won't catch the train. So remember this. Next, the children laughed at the clown. Here we need to change the voice from active voice to passive voice. So we know we have to begin with the clown, correct? The clown was laughed at by the children. The point you need to remember here is, if there's a preposition after the verb, make sure you retain the preposition after the verb. Okay, so the clown was laughed by the children will be wrong. This laughed at, this at has to be there in your answer. Next, again, it's an imperative sentence. Put an end to capital punishment. Your answer can either be capital punishment should be put to an end, or the common one, let capital punishment be put to an end. Next, the next question deals with degree. Again, very, very possible. You always have a question on degree. Now here it says, George plays the guitar better than Paul. So you can see better is the comparative degree, and here it says rewrite using positive degree. So you need to know the three forms of the word better. So it's good, better, best. We have to use positive degree. That means we have to use good. So our sentence should not change its meaning. Paul does not play the guitar as good as George. Keep in mind one thing, when you're rewriting, your grammar should be correct. The rubric should be followed. That means you must do what has been told. It says positive, so you should use good. And the syntax should be correct. That means your word should be in the correct order and the meaning should not change. Okay. So George plays the guitar better than Paul. Paul does not play the guitar as good as George. So keep in mind, when you write it in the comparative degree, there will always be a than in your answer. When you write in the positive degree, there will always be an as. And when you write in the superlative degree, as given in the next sentence, there will always be a the. Very few subjects are as important as English. Use most. English is one of the most important subjects. So keep this in mind. Your answer must have the if it is the superlative degree. Sometimes you have questions like this. A gypsy was wandering across the hills. He found a bag of gold coins. Wandering. Begin wandering. Now, I want you to pay attention. Sometimes we are in a hurry and we don't pay attention to the articles. This is also important. So, wandering across the hills. A gypsy found a bag of gold coins. So, in the distractors, make sure the articles are also correct. They are not missing. Next, a very common question that you can expect in the examination is use of to. Either use to or remove to. So here the sentence is, the old man was too sick to walk. So you have to remove to. So the best way of changing this would be, the old man was so sick that he could not walk. So we all know this. But keep in mind this sentence, she is so busy that she finds no time to entertain her friends. When you are writing it using to, she is too busy to find time to entertain her friends. Remember, whenever you are using to, it should always be followed with to and base form of the verb and infinitive form of the verb. Okay, so to will always have an infinitive. So your to walk, to find. This is the structure you need to bear in mind. So if they are giving you a sentence like this and ask you to choose the right sentence where to has been used, make sure this particular thing is there in the statement. Next, he is a diplomat and a poet. Begin not only. Now, when you are beginning with not only, when you're using not only, remember not only will always be complemented with a but also. Sometimes the distractor may only have also. So be clear about this. Also remember, when you begin with not only, you use an inversion. So the verb comes first and then comes the subject. Not only he is a diplomat will be wrong. Not only is he a diplomat. Okay, so not only must have but also, and it should also have inversion. That means verb will come first and then the subject. Next one, he gave him not only food but also money. So not only but also. Now here we have to begin with besides. Now keep in mind, if you're writing the sentence with besides, besides means what? Besides means in addition to. So when you're writing this answer, besides giving him food, comma, he gave him money. A common mistake that I have seen children make is that they will write like this: besides giving him food, he also gave him money. That also is not required, because that also is covered over here, because it means in addition to. Okay, so be mindful of this. A next interesting question is this: I would rather eat fruit than unhealthy junk food. Okay, I would rather. So you might get a question like this: I would rather, and the question would say use prefer. So the point you need to keep in mind is this rather can be substituted with prefer. So the answer will be, I prefer to eat food than unhealthy junk food. Please don't use rather and prefer in the same sentence. Some sentences that I have read like this: I would rather prefer to eat fruit than unhealthy junk food. That would be wrong. So remember, they substitute or they can be used in place of each other. Next, okay, this should be Ranji. Ranji prefers reading a book to watching a movie. So here we have prefers and it says use would rather. So the correct answer would be Ranji would rather read a book than watch a movie. Okay, so the same concept has been reiterated in the sentence. Next one, it would be sensible to inform the police. Begin you had. Again, in one of my previous videos, I have specified how do we write a sentence like this. So when you have you had, remember it is advice. It would be sensible to inform the police. Had better is a kind of a modal. It's kind of a helping verb which is used to give advice before the damage is done. So you had better inform the police. Next, what a lovely sunset. It's an exclamatory sentence which we need to change into assertive. So it has to be a sentence. So remember, whenever you have sentences that begin with what and how in exclamatory form, when you change them into assertive, when you change them into an ordinary sentence, you must use very. Okay, so the correct answer is the sunset is very lovely. This has to be there. Likewise, how delicate this bowl is. The correct answer will be this bowl is very delicate. So I'll repeat once again. When you have exclamatory sentences beginning with what or how, use very in your answer. This could be the opposite. You may be given a sentence like this and you may be asked to change it into exclamatory. The teacher rejected our suggestions. It says accept. That means it's the opposite. Remember, meaning should not change. If you write the teacher accepted our suggestions, then the meaning is changing. So we have to use accept and we have to make necessary changes. So the correct answer will be the teacher did not accept our suggestion. So we have used accept, we have followed the rubric and we have not changed the meaning. A very important sentence, she pretends to be blind. She's not. She pretends to be blind. So if you have to express this using an as if clause or as though, then remember one thing, you need to use were. She pretends as if she were blind. Don't write she pretends as if she was blind. Okay, the correct option would be were. Next, no one will deny that the children have worked very hard this year. So it is no one. And now we are using everyone. So this will be changed. We need to write the opposite of deny. So we have different opposites of deny. So we can use everyone will agree, everyone will affirm. You can write everyone will accept. The children have worked very hard this year. Okay. So if the sentence begins with no one, you need to begin with everyone. Then you need to use an opposite. Next, he escaped by night to avoid being seen. use lest. There has been a lot of confusion about the use of lest, but I'll stick to the traditional rules of grammar. Whenever we use lest, we have to use should. In case in the examination, in the distractors, you don't find should and this question comes, then choose the one that you feel is the closest possible answer. Okay, so also remember one important thing: whenever you are writing a sentence with lest and with should, it conveys a negative idea. So you don't have to use a not. Okay, you cannot write like this: he escaped by night lest he should not be seen. That would be wrong. Then we have sentences like this: I never imagined that the country would be under lockdown. So if we have to begin with little, or we have to begin with never. Remember again, these sentences, they take an inversion. Little did I imagine or never did I imagine. This has to be borne in mind. Next one is 33. He is poor, he is honest. Combine the sentences. Now you know this. These are two contrasting sentences. So you can join them using though he is poor, he's honest. Although he is poor, he's honest. Even though he is poor, he's honest. Okay. Or you can use in spite of being poor, he's honest. You know that. You can write despite being poor, he's honest. A very common mistake children write is they use despite of. Despite of is wrong. So if the option says begin despite, look for this. If the sentence has despite of, eliminate that the very first. Okay, despite of is wrong. Next, he spends as much as he earns. We have to use the more. The more he earns, the more he spends. Okay. The more he earns, the more he spends. Here, make sure that you are conveying the correct meaning. You cannot write the more he spends, the more he earns. You have to stick to the accurate meaning you need to convey. Finally, there's one more point. We know about no sooner now, but suppose they ask you to begin a sentence with hardly. Again, remember, principles remain the same, but there's one basic difference. If you are using hardly, then use had. Subject, that is your Ram, the verb will be in the third form because it's had, just as in no sooner, had verb in the third form. The only difference is you will use when instead of than. When you are writing with no sooner, you use than over here. But when you're writing with hardly, barely, scarcely, you will use a when over here. Okay. So the correct sentence will be: hardly had Ram narrated the story when he was praised. Scarcely had Ram narrated the story when he was praised, or barely had Ram narrated the story when he was praised. So that was some very quick revision. I tried to cover a lot of rules that might be tested in the examination. I hope these rules help you. They help you to remember what is the correct structure you need to have. When you do your grammar section, make sure you read all the options carefully before you decide on the answer. So all the best. May you do very well in the exam. Happy learning.